Nowadays, there is an increased awareness of climate change among society, especially concerning global change in temperatures and the current mass extinction of epic proportions. However, few discuss sociological issues arising from the consequences of climate change. Here is a map taken from the NASA website that I tried my best to recreate, showing the areas that are most affected by rising water levels. There's approximately 3.3 to 3.6 billion people that are highly vulnerable to climate change based on the context of where they live. Even though this is not the only cause of environmental impact, it is the most widespread. Those risks have become more prevalent by the year with the increased frequency of natural disasters. These causes of concern do not discriminate on the basis of socioeconomic status or race, but the patterns of gentrification do. From the floods of Miami, Florida to post disaster New Orleans, Louisiana, there is evidence to believe that climate change is a cause of gentrification of low income communities. This is great news for predatory investors and those looking for a place to get away from the destruction climate change brings. But the effects destroyed communities and displaced those from previously low income areas are not to be ignored. This consequence of climate change, known as climate gentrification, is defined as the displacement of low income groups as a result of climate impacts threatening other communities or their own. It is a distinct form of gentrification that has its own causes, which leads to different consequences, and its relevance comes from the man made impacts causing real world change. Forest fires, droughts, rising water levels, or any form of natural disasters that change socioeconomic status of the area is considered climate gentrification. Climate gentrification is important in understanding and addressing the complex causes and consequences of poverty and inequality to prevent displacement of communities and to respect the dignity of everyone involved. Climate gentrification and general gentrification are similar in their effects but unparalleled in their cause. Richard Campanella, professor and researcher of geography and architecture at Tulane University, describes gentrification coming in four distinct waves, all signaling to each other when to move in. He calls the first wave gutter punks, which he describes to be young people looking to get away from the cultural norm of their higher class neighborhoods, leading to the second wave of hipsters, who see these punk infused neighborhoods as bastions of coolness and usually open gentrification staples such as coffee shops or yoga studios. The third phase, bourgeois bohemians, are the real estate developers and investors that bring the rising cost of living in the form of luxury apartments to the artsy centers, usually brought upon by the hipsters. This is when the displacement happens, and the arrival of the last phase, bona fide gentry, which brings the digital nomads, retirees, and other individuals with greater purchasing power that buy into expensive apartments and overpriced pizza shops, sealing the city as a gentrified shell of what it used to be. Climate gentrification often skips steps and opens the door to displacement faster than any relief program can reflect increasing housing demand. Gentrification could be categorized as climate gentrification if the reasons for its occurrence is due to climate-related disasters such as floodings, fires, or droughts. Climate gentrification is not like general gentrification because it is often unpredictable and comes in a fast wave, unlike general gentrification, slow and often preventable displacement. Climate gentrification scenarios can also be different under different circumstances. Imagine areas A and B are both low-income neighborhoods. After a hurricane, A is further inland and B is completely destroyed because it is closer to the shore. Wealthy residents of impacted communities will flee to A, so more resources will be put to rebuilding it. B, however, is not gaining equal resources to building because it is an unfortunate location, risking another hurricane. Now the original residents of A and B are displaced because of the unequal resources that are being provided to rebuild. It is more likely for low-income residents to be negatively impacted and displaced by disasters. Environmental risks displace and force wealthier people to move in other areas, which happen to be those of low income. An entire area can hit, and the redevelopment is slower than some areas, while changing the demographic of other low income areas. The result is more people homeless, culture being eroded, and people being taken advantage of because of their economic status. It's fast paced, and the circumstances that cause climate gentrification continue to be a more pressing issue as environmental health worsens. The melting of major glaciers and thermal expansion are the biggest cause for rising sea levels, all being byproducts of global warming. The average rate of the sea level rising from 2006 to 2018 is increased to 3.7 millimeters per year. This massive difference in such a short amount of time prevented coastal regions from putting preventative or relocation measures to communities. Many major cities along the coast are experiencing flooding and causing destruction for those living closest to along the beaches and other bodies of water. Miami Beach, Florida is investing $1 billion in infrastructure projects to keep residents high and dry. This also means that the average monthly utility bill in Miami will jump to $200 over the next 5 years. This rising cost of living is a cause of concern considering that 19% of Miami's residents live below the poverty rate, according to the 2022 U.S. Census on the Gini Index, a measurement of income and wealth inequality. And the city is ranked number 5 for the cities with the most income inequality in the United States. This sounds like the perfect formula for predatory investors to start redevelopment and drive up prices by leveraging the prestige that the city of Miami has. This is largely the case as Miami-Dade County, the larger Miami Beach area, is shown to increase the value of land in higher elevation. These lands in higher elevations tend to be further inland compared to the rich beachfront areas, which also happens to be home to a historically marginalized community, leading to 1 million people to be displaced in Miami alone, leading to some kind of reverse white flight that would be growingly common as climate change worsens sea level changes. The consequences of many years of institutionalized segregation and redlining are now starting to feel the reverse effects. Initially, the richer people of Miami wanted the city to have its beautiful beachfronts to stay beautiful, while the rest can sit in the less idealized quandars of the inland area. Ironically, the elevated inlands are more sought after for their distance away from the beachfronts because of rising sea levels. This could be extended far beyond Miami. It is predicted that 13 million people in the United States are going to be displaced by sea level rise by 2100. That means 13 million more people that will unintentionally unhouse many more. Hurricane Katrina is one of the deadliest and costliest storms in U.S. history, and it isn't going to be the peak of how deadly a storm will be either. Hurricanes have become 18 miles per hour stronger between 2019 and 2023 because of sea surface temperatures being higher, fueling the rapidly intensifying cyclones. This means that hurricanes and the damage that comes with them are going to be increasingly more prevalent and dangerous as climate change worsens. Destruction in these massive scales have historically led to gentrification and displacement of low-income neighborhoods. In the case of Hurricane Katrina, minority and low-income households were far more likely to have left the city compared to higher-income households, making the New Orleans metropolitan area more white, less poor, and more transitory than pre-hurricane population. This change in demographics is a sign that the negative effects of rebuilding New Orleans fell disproportionately on minorities and low-income households. The rebuilding of the city is mostly benefiting non-minorities, while culturally and historically significant African American neighborhoods are suffering. Trem is one of the country's oldest black neighborhoods, and the birthplace of jazz is currently making up 10% of Airbnbs, and black population in Bywater dropped 64% between 2000 and 2010. Growth should prioritize and serve all people, and treating specific groups that get caught in the crossfire as a necessary sacrifice for the betterment of everyone is not growth. One reason for the massive change in housing prices is the US government sending a record-breaking $100 billion for recovery and reconstruction, leading to predatory investors taking advantage of the vast terra nova that the storm created and the massive spending that was already taking place. In turn, this created an artificial culture capital where post-Katrina New Orleans was predetermined to have richer residents. Before the storm, about 2,000 people were counted as homeless. That number went up to about 11,000 in January 2007, leading to almost 5 times increase after just 2 years after the hurricane. The pattern of those already at risk becoming more likely to being worse off is called the recovery machine hypothesis. It argues that pre-disaster status governs post-disaster access to resource and recovery, meaning that wealthier communities recover quicker and are less affected than low-income communities. Some say that gentrification of places as a result of environmental disasters is an important step as it reflects the majority and their needs to stay safe. This is true to some extent. Unlike general gentrification, it is not the choice of those with more purchasing power to displace those with less. They all have families, jobs, and memories that bind them with the area that is unfortunately being impacted by floodings or by natural disasters. It is important to understand that the lives being impacted that are causing gentrification, as they too deserve to have their own dignity respected regarding the climate, something they cannot control. We should not blame them for not moving on to another area entirely and leaving everything behind when they could have the capabilities to stay, but their stay unfortunately means displacing others in the process. Some communities continue to survive physically and culturally, while also causing the capabilities of already vulnerable populations to exacerbate in the face of environmental strain. That being said, the sentiment that climate gentrification helps support and build more housing for more people is not true. As with the cases with Hurricane Katrina, population decreased by over a half, and more than 1 million people were displaced, and up to 600,000 households were still displaced after many months. Even still, justifying the suffering of one group of people to uplift a certain group of people does not respect anyone's dignity. It makes those with higher purchasing power feel as though they are disrespecting those with lower by simply living. Although gentrification may also improve housing conditions and transportation, it does not mean that gentrification is a solution to improving overall well being. Displacing many people by essentially kicking them out of the neighborhood for not being able to keep up with the increased cost of living should not outweigh the well being of those who make that displacement happen. Displacement of people for being too poor only dehumanizes low income residents and paints them to be an obstacle for increasing good for wealthier residents. Issues often related to poverty, like crime, do not go away either, as the numbers just go up in surrounding areas. Gentrification does not eradicate poverty, it only pushes them out of the way of the system that only favors those who are wealthy. Climate gentrification is a prevalent issue that will only get worse with time. It is important to understand its effects because it's not just the well being of someone that is in danger, but also their lives. Changes in climate do not discriminate against anyone's socioeconomic status. For this reason, we must include efforts that not only prevent the displacement of vulnerable groups, but also ensure the safety of everyone affected. Many people are left homeless, are forced to leave their job and community, or are pushed to their mental limits while trying to maintain their living in a community that is becoming increasingly expensive. There are many solutions to gentrification already, like rent freezes for those making under a certain amount and community land trusts. However, not address the looming danger that all of humanity faces, climate change.